Well, it's time for real talk today. Appreciate that so many people have been watching the YouTube stuff. Received quite a few requests for this one specifically, and it was one I already had on my list. So it's time for real talk. But talk about optics today. Holosun 507 comp against Vortex Defender XL. If you're looking for the largest kind of window optic, I think these two are the ones to buy. Going backwards a bit in the past, I think up until recently, the Trijicon SRO was the one to buy. The reason is they were the most reliable. A lot of the other stuff, it's like, all right. So if this is real talk, a couple friends of mine shoot USPSA at a very high level, and they were on the Delta Point Pro train. They had, let's say, 2 or 3 guns set up with dots on them, then 2 or 3 extra dots also that were just extras. What would happen is shoot the gun until the dot fails, take that dot off, send it in for replacement, use one of the additional dots, put that on the gun in the meantime while you're waiting for the warranty to come back. This sounds crazy, but kind of in the kind of the earlier days of carry optics coming out and that kind of stuff, they're just, in my opinion, unless you want to deal with nonsense like that, the Trijicon SRO was the one to buy. To this day, it's still a great option, and if you have one, I would not tell you to sell it or stop using it because they're fantastic. The only issue with them is I think the other models have all the same features like these two and are less money. So that's my reasoning for, and I mean the SRO has the double dot issue too, which these really don't have. So anyway, maybe these two have surpassed it. But if you have an SRO, I'm not telling you to sell what you have, but you need to buy something different. Trijicon stuff is good to go, but if you're buying one today, I think one of these two are what you should be buying. The biggest thing I think to talk about, this is being real, is footprint. I think that factors into people's decision making a lot, and I think it should. If you have a direct mill, you don't have much choice. If you have a plate system, then maybe you're buying a different plate. So for example, the Holosun takes the Trijicon RMR SRO pattern. So if you're going from one Trijicon product to this one you just drop on and you're good to go. You don't have to buy a plate or anything else. The Vortex takes the loopholed Delta Point Pro pattern. So if you are a SIG user or what else? Probably military stuff. There's a lot of Delta Point Pros floating around in team rooms and stuff like that. So maybe for the military stuff, if you have a Delta Point Pro or a SIG person, this might be what you already have a plate for. Anyway, that's the big two deciding factors for me between the two. Is just like, what do I already have and do I want to buy a plate or not? After that, talking about dot size, I'll talk about this one first because it's simpler to talk about. The Vortex, they come in a 5 or an 8 MOA. I prefer the 5. Originally when I got this, I thought the 5 was going to be too big and I wished it was a smaller dot. After I used it for a bit, originally I was a little bit annoyed. Using it for a bit, I just stopped noticing the dot because I wasn't staring at it. Instead, trying to be target focused. And now I don't even notice it. It's not a big deal at all. So if you just sit here and look at the two dots side by side, yeah, okay, the 5 is a little bit bigger, whatever. But actually using them, it's not really an issue at all. So this one's just a 5, and it's just a plain dot, which is what I prefer. The Holosun has a smaller 2-minute dot, and I think it's like 6 or 8 reticle options. So on these, if you hold down the minus button, it cycles through a bunch of reticles. You have a plain dot, a dot with a circle in the middle, just the circle, and a variety of like smaller dots. Anyway, there's a whole circus full of stuff. Honestly, I think that's a solution to a non-existent problem. I really like just the plain small dot from this one. On a rifle, I like having the circle. That's good for a lot of applications, but on a pistol, just want it to be simple. The reason for that is if you're using that circle and you pick a spot you want to hit, if I'm just going to react to the color of the sight, it's very tempting to wait until the circle gets to my eye line, and once I just see the outside ring of that circle, start firing. As you can guess, that's going to be a little bit of a fundamental issue unless you're taking the time to wait until the circle's dead in the center and then look through the circle or something else. It sounds like it eats up time and sounds terrible just explaining. So anyway, on the pistol sight, I don't think the extra options are needed. I just like the plain sight, just the plain dot, and this one's smaller, so this one's a 2 MOA. I guess I'll tell a quick story. On Sometimes I don't read directions on some stuff. I'll just take it out and start using it. One of the Holosuns I had, not a 507, but a different Holosun product, when I pulled it out of the box, hitting the plus button, and it's not going bright enough, I thought, well, maybe the battery's dead, or maybe it sat in a warehouse for a while before I bought it, or whatever. So, get a different battery for it, put the battery in, kept hitting the plus button. It's not going bright enough. Then I decided I should read the instructions, and it turns out it has a lockout feature, where I think for that model, it was adjusting to overhead lighting, something like that, so an auto adjust feature. Anyway, all I did was just turn that off, and then I can turn up the dot so bright that it's starbursting. It looks like I'm staring into the sun, which is what I want, just to be able to adjust it to wherever I want. So anyway, if you have a Holosun, you can't get it bright enough, it's not the optic, it's you, or just read the directions. For the Vortex, there's also like a lockout feature, so it'll make the side buttons inoperable or change how those work. I turned that off also. I read the directions, specifically how to disable it, and then disabled it and haven't messed with it since. Because for me, I'm not doing any kind of a duty type of setup where I'm worried about something, buttons touching it, whatever. I just want, if I hit the up button, I want it to go up. If I want it to go down, I want it to just adjust when I press the button. Just do what I say. So anyway, that's the options for dots. Let's get into the downsides. They're honestly pretty nitpicky. The biggest one with the Holosun is the battery screw and tray. And the screw is this little guy right there in the middle. Hopefully I can find a spot where it focuses. And then the tray is right underneath it, little rectangle. The problem with this is sometimes when you're shooting, the screw will slowly back out over time. If the screw then falls out while you're shooting, the tray could also fall out also or come loose, then your dot would turn off. Simple enough solution to this. I just witness mark it with a paint pen. So just kind of a stripe over it, and then you can just look at a glance and see if your witness mark lines up or if the line's off center with the line going through the screw as opposed to what's kind of on the edge of the housing. Then you'll know you have a problem. You just need to tighten it down. Some people use Loctite also as a way to stop those from backing out, and I haven't had to do that yet, but it makes sense, and it'd be fine if you had to. Otherwise, it's pretty minor. The only other thing I don't like necessarily about Holosun is, if I can get a good angle or if it focuses, the windage and elevation screws are small, and you need to use their tool with it to adjust. I've tried using like the smallest screwdriver I have in my kind of a universal kind of kit in my range bag, and it's okay, but just using the Holosun tool is way better. So if you have one of theirs, you want to put that little tool in your range bag, and once you zero, you're good to go. It's not like I guess you ever need it again. But anyway, it's just something small and something I wanted to notice or to talk about. That's really it for complaints about Holosun, which is pretty minor. On the Vortex, my complaint is battery related also, which is probably minor. On this one, the screws, oddly enough, if you use a 22 long rifle casing on your range, if you're in a public range, there's probably going to be some of those around. That works pretty well. Otherwise, it's smaller also, but not as small of a screw as what's on the Holosun. The battery tray I don't necessarily love. If you just set it and forget it and everything works great and your battery never dies, it's fine. Otherwise, if you ever have to change it, or if you're like me and just want to see how everything works, you have to push in on this thing with a punch. When you push down the silver spot that you can see, it then moves this little gate out of the way, which goes through to the cap. You can see it's over here, ends on this little wing or this little button. I've had some of those bind, so what I had to do was like push down on that and then use a punch or a screwdriver from the side to kind of open the little gate. Then once it opened, good to go. So anyway, this is pretty minor stuff. That's the only really complaint I have. One nice thing about the Vortex, if you're a Glock owner, the Defender XLs come with a Glock plate and all the hardware in the box. So I suspect that was because it'll be an agency thing, or I have some friends with agencies already looking at this or have already approved this. So I assume that's part of the selling feature. But anyway, if you buy Defender XL, they come with a Glock plate, and Benny Boy, my tester, has a couple of Vortex plates on a couple of his Glocks, and no issues so far. So if you do buy a Vortex, it does come with a plate for Glock MOS, which is kind of cool. Anyway, conclusions. Man, I don't really have a way to like hard sell you on either one, if we're being real. I think these two are the best options for, call them $400 or less, depending on who's running a sale or, that kind of stuff. For me, I take one of each of these with me when I travel for classes. So I use either Walther PDP steel frames or the PDP polymer frames. If I'm going with steel frames, I'll just take 2 steel frames and one gun that has, or a gun that has each of these optics on them. So, sorry, a gun with this optic on it and a gun with this optic on it. That way I'm set. If I'm doing polymer frames, same deal. 2 guns with different optics. That way if somebody in class asks to look through it or has questions, it's just like, oh, here you go. Just check them out. Let me know what you think. So the other thing I've noticed for some people with like astigmatisms or whatever, just the way people see things clearly, sometimes people will say one looks like a perfect dot, one looks starburst or looks tear-shaped, something like that. I think it all depends on, from my experience, just your eyes are, it's like a super individual thing. So maybe you look through one or the other and it looks magical compared to the other one. Otherwise, when in doubt, if you want to save money, if you need one, I would just pick, I mean, honestly, whichever plate system you have the footprint for, it's safe to just buy that dot because neither one of these are going to let you down. They both have good warranty. So anyway, I'm sorry, but it's not a hard sell for either one. Like I said, there's a couple nitpicky things, especially with the Holosun. Make sure you use the witness mark on the battery screw just so you don't lose that for the tray. But otherwise, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. And I roll with both of them just because, well, I like having options anyway. So anyway, I don't have a hard sell for you. Hopefully that helps answer questions anyway. If you have an SRO and you like it, don't sell it. But if you're in the market to buy a dot, one of these two are the ones I think you should be looking at. So anyway, if you have questions or disagree with me, drop below.